Hey everybody, this is Helen Mitas and I am super excited today because I'm going to introduce to you my latest HypnoFit licensed partner, and here she is, Vanessa Sell. Welcome!
Hey Helen, thank you so much. It's so exciting.
I'm so excited. So excited about this that I can't wait to tell you all about Vanessa because she's amazing. The people that partner up with me are all people that are, people that I would love to spend time with socially anyway, because the way that I see it, if you're going to be my HypnoFit licensed partner, it's someone that I've got to really love the energy of, the commitment of, and so on. And so Vanessa is from Brisbane, so that's the new location that we're going to have a HypnoFit clinic, which is Brisbane, which is super duper exciting. So just to let you guys know in terms of what I mean by HypnoFit licensed partner. So the HypnoFit licensed partners are the people that I trust implicitly in terms of partnering up with them to open up a HypnoFit clinic where all my intellectual property is basically handed over to this partner, and everything occurs as if it's a HypnoFit clinic. The same system is used, the same email, the same intellectual property, and these guys get the most support. So we're all in it together. So my first partner was Bridget Perrick from Sydney. The next one was Frances Bueno from Sydney. Then we had June Callan from Auckland, and now, yay, we got Brisbane. I'm so happy. I love Brisbane. So happy that I've got Vanessa. So I want to introduce Vanessa to you. So Vanessa, tell me a little bit about your background.
Okay, so I actually had a bit of an interesting background. I'm born into a family with four siblings. My sister above me, she's 6.5 years older than me, but she's actually disabled. And so I've lived with people in disability quite most of my life. And then when I was 13, my dad had a brain hemorrhage and a stroke and became disabled as well. So I lived with my mum and my sister, who's disabled, and my dad, who was disabled. And it was at that period of my life where it was quite an interesting journey, as you can imagine, not really realizing the impact that that was going to have later on down the track. I had some very interesting experiences with spirit as well, and my journey started into looking into why we behave the way we behave and how do we end up with all these different situations occur in our life. And as my journey went on, I went up and I went down. I also suffered a lot from hay fever, allergies, lots of illnesses, sinus problems. I had already had a couple of sinus operations by the time I was 16. And then I went through my 20s and I kind of went the opposite direction. I didn't go in the health direction. I went in the completely opposite direction. And I guess now that I look at life, we can't have the experience of one without the experience of other. We don't know what black is like unless we have the opportunity to experience black. You have to have this duality. And so I think I went one direction completely and then bounced away from that and went, well, okay, this isn't working for me. And my health issues just got worse and worse and worse. And by the time I was in my 30s, I had pain throughout my body. I was trying to be a yoga teacher at the time as well and studying, but I was in physical pain. It was so severe that I think I was on medication every day just to cope with that. And then, as time went on, I kept looking at health. I've always had this fascination for health. And I remember going to uni and studying. I studied at uni science as well as the arts. I did a double degree, and I was so fascinated in how the cells worked that I was trying to find people to actually say, my God, look at this. This is amazing. Look at how this works. It was so such a passion for me to try and figure out how things work, how things operate, how our brain works. Why do we do the things that we do? Why do we end up feeling anxious? Why do we feel depressed? And I've had both. I was very anxious and I didn't know it until I got rid of it, how anxious I was. I also went into depression quite a bit, and that was after having my second son, because I started to grieve a previous life that I'd had prior to having a son. And I had all boys, and I never in my life imagined that I'd have boys. I thought I'd have girls, and I didn't. So I had to cope with that, and there was a lot of that going on. And all the while I'm experiencing these experiences, I'm also learning about it and doing them as much as I could to force feed information in so that I could help myself and then my kids, and then eventually come to a place where I've, learned everything that I've learned to help the people around me, and then eventually drawing clients in and starting on that level.
Wow. So Vanessa, it's such a fascinating story that from a very, very early age, you had to deal with disability in your family. So with a sibling first, and then with your father, and then so you were allocated from a really early age the role of carer, which is quite a burden for a young person who is starting out. So how did you cope with that burden?
Well, I became pretty tough. I'm actually a very sensitive person, and I feel how other people feel, and I had no idea that actually what I was doing was absorbing their emotions, their experiences. I also ended up in relationships that were very unhealthy. I was with people who were abusive. They were drug people who would take drugs, alcoholics, and I couldn't understand why that was happening to me. And because I'm like, I'm a good person. How is this possible? Why am I finding unhealthy men in relationships? And I understand that now. So I help a lot of women working through their own sense of self-worth, because I know that that's what I didn't have. I didn't have an understanding of what was okay and what was not okay. And so
it's interesting. That's really fascinating in terms of what you just said. I think it's so important, which you said that you were attracting these types of men into your life, people who had their own addiction issues and so on, because you didn't have your own self-worth. So you're basically attracting that which you're giving out, that energy that you're giving out. And people don't realize that when they're attracting these types of people as to why that is. And that's because of the energy you hold for yourself and the lack of love that you have for yourself.
Absolutely. And, at the time, people said those kinds of things to me, but I didn't have the awareness or the understanding that it was me that was, causing this attraction in my life. And I know now that as I'm growing and have learnt so much about myself, that the more I increase my frequency, the more I increase my vibration, the more I release the negative emotions, the more I can see the thoughts that I have impacting how I feel at that moment, but not only impacting how I feel, I get the impacts that happens from my child. So the minute I respond a particular way, it's like this mirror is standing right in front of me, and it bounces straight back off the mirror and hits back at me. Now, instead of reacting back at that, I've actually gone, oh my God, that's my mirror reflecting exactly what I've just done at them, back at me. So I now go, what do I need to change about me so that doesn't happen in the other person?
And how empowering is that? Because then you're not waiting for someone else to change, because if we keep waiting for other people to change, we're going to be forever disappointed. And we're going to be in that hurt, anger space, because people will never live up to our expectations, because we're all different. But what you're saying is that as soon as you have that experience, that negative experience, you look at yourself and you look internally and say to yourself, well, what needs to happen here so that I don't attract that again, so that that's not happening again? And that's a process that I go through as well. And that way we're the ones that are empowered, because we're not looking to change others, we're looking to change ourselves and our perceptions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that in that, it doesn't happen overnight. You know that, and a lot of people have this automatic response this automatic negative response or way of being, that they actually don't see it for what it is. And it's not until you actually start doing the awareness and the growth that there's a gap that happens between the action and the reaction, and that gap does grow over time. But sometimes you need somebody to walk beside you to help you to see what it is that you're not doing, because we can't always see exactly what we're doing wrong. We need someone to walk beside us to help us to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when people think that, I can just work it out myself, it's not the point. It's not about working it out by yourself logically. It's exactly what you said. It's someone facilitating that process of helping you get unblocked, get out of your own way. I know that with me, throughout my journey, I've always sought help.
Yes. And to add to that, what that aspect is the conscious mind, jumping in, going, oh, well, I know what to do. Whereas in actual fact, the unconscious mind, which is hiding all that data, all that information, all that trauma, all those experiences that we've had in our life, is hidden away in kind of like a little database or a box or a filing cabinet or whatever you want to call it, put to the side, repressed, so that we can get on with our lives. And actually, it surfaces. And I know with my clients and for myself, it surfaces in the way of like an image. And then and it takes us back in time to that point where we start thinking about that circumstance. And if it's a positive circumstance, we feel good. And if it's not, then we get those negative feelings as we're reliving that same experience.
Exactly. So, just because you're not thinking about something consciously doesn't mean it's not there. It is underneath the surface, and it's going to come up to bite you unless you deal with it.
Yes, and as the minute that you get the learnings that you need from that particular point in time, that's it. It moves, and you don't have that same experience or the same feelings aren't there anymore. Yeah. So you get to move on.
Finally. Exactly. And another thing that fascinated me about what you said, Vanessa, and everybody else, you can see why I've got Vanessa as my HypnoFit licensed partner. She's just amazing, absolutely amazing. My partners are the highest caliber. You talked about spirit, which was interesting. You said that spirit played a part. Can you talk more about that? Because it's fascinating.
Sure. Well, I'll just quickly share the experience I had. I was 14, I think, and I worked at Big W at the time in the shoe department, and my mum worked on the service desk. And out of the blue, this person, a male, walked up to me and handed me a jewelry box, and he said, "This is for you." And I didn't think anything of it. I just kind of looked at him. I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" He said, "This is for you." I went, "Okay." And then I took it off him. I opened it up, and it was a cross. I looked up, and he was gone.
Oh my God, I've got shivers going up and down my body. Oh my God, I did not know this story.
It was at that point in my life where I was feeling a little bit lost. My dad had a brain hemorrhage. He was at home. He was disabled in a wheelchair. I was a teenager, not really sure of myself at that point in time as well. So anyway, I went up to the service desk and I said to Mum, "This guy's just handed me this jewelry box with a cross in it. Does it belong to the store?" And because she was on service desk, she just, did a search for it, and it didn't. It didn't belong to the store. So I took it home, and of course I wore it, and I wore it religiously. It was like, and what's interesting about my dad was that we're not a religious family at all. But when my dad became ill with this brain hemorrhage, and he went towards the Bible and he started reading it religiously. And there were certain things that he would say, and it was kind of around that same time that this thing happened.
Wow.
So it kind of, for me, it kick-started my movement, I guess, towards spirituality. And I had that experience, and I also had an experience where my brother brought a Hare Krishna home, a friend of his who had turned into a Hare Krishna person. And I was so attracted to, I don't think I was attracted to him more than attracted to
the energy,
and the representation of what that was for me. So my journey started then, and I was constantly felt like I was being watched. So it was kind of positive and not positive. I felt like I was being watched all the time. I felt like I had to be a good girl all the time. I was put in a position in my own mind where I was in turmoil, trying to figure out what was the right thing to be doing, and then beating myself up over making mistakes and doing the wrong thing. And of course, you know, the story goes on. Not say, but I won't.
Fascinating, Vanessa, fascinating. And because of, you know, the wonderful thing about all of these experiences is that at the time we see them as negative, but really they end up being positive because of those experiences, you are now the therapist that you are. Definitely. So, you know, tell us about who are the people that you tend to find that you are helping the most.
Sure. So I see a lot of mainly women. Women are my niche market. I do get occasionally some quite sensitive men who are trying to find their way forward. The people that I see are usually dealing with a lot of stress. They may be going through life changes and they feel a bit lost. There's quite a lot of anxiety, stress, depression comes in quite a bit. And because of the physical issues I think that I've experienced in my life and the learnings that I've gained from those, I get a lot of people with physical symptoms. And I find that the symptoms will relate to the emotional side of things. So I work a lot on the emotional components of this physical symptoms. And by releasing, for me, all of those aspects, I notice that people's physical symptoms start to...
So what kind of physical symptoms are we talking about?
Pain, back pain, neck pain, headaches, a lot of shoulder stuff, things in the feet and knees. I work a lot. I'm a kinesiologist, and I work with a lot of different tools, releasing these problems as well as the hypnotherapy side of it. And over the years, I've moved more towards the mental side of things, mental health. In the last year or two, I've had a lot more people come to me because they've been to a lot of places, a lot of psychologists or counselors or, you know, wherever they've gone, and they haven't been able to resolve their issues. So,
yeah. And that's, you know, what you're talking about there, what people don't realize, when they experience physical symptoms, not always, but a lot of the time, these physical symptoms are just being expressed because of what's going on underneath the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, pain itself in our mental, if we have mental pain and we don't deal with it, eventually it's going to surface as a physical symptom for us to take notice of. You know, the pain in the physical body is there for us to look at. And if we don't look at that, it's going to get louder and louder. And then move else in the physical.
It's trying to send a message, right? It's trying to say, hey, I'm trying to send you a message, you know, do something. I know with me that when I experience overwhelm or stress, I feel it in my tummy. I know that my tummy starts to bloat and my pain comes from here. I was seeing a client last week and her pain was really, you know, always comes from the ovary region of her body. And so, you know, being aware that, you know, quite often people go to doctors, more doctors, and it's like, oh, I don't know what it is. It could be this, try this medication. I don't know what it is. It could be this, try this medication. So when they don't know what it is, I'm not saying don't go to the doctors, go to the doctors for heaven's sakes. But when it's inconclusive as to what it is, rather than going on medication, how about looking within to see what's going on underneath the surface?
Yeah. And I do find that people come to me as a last resort because they've gotten the diagnosis, which is generally speaking, nothing's wrong. And then they search for a natural way to figure out what's going on. And they'll come to me with symptoms such as exactly that. And I'll actually look at that particular area, which relates to the sacral chakra area as well. And, you know, if we're out in our chakras themselves, that surfaces as a symptom. You know, anything in this area is related to the throat chakra. Anything in this area, you know, is related to the third eye. And what are we not seeing? And how, you know, how can we look beyond what we're actually dealing with at that point in time. Anything to do with the lower legs, and what I was usually relates to the base chakra and feeling safe and secure in the world. And if you don't feel safe and secure, which a lot of people aren't at the moment because of, loss of job, all the symptoms of COVID, everything that's been coming up around that, I can see that there's going to be a lot of that lower body symptoms coming up.
Interesting. And what about the neck? What do you think that's an expression of when you got pain in the neck?
Well, usually anything around this area is either you are suppressing your whatever thoughts you've got going on, you can't express yourself, or you're not being able to allow yourself to say what it is you need to say, or you're actually holding on to certain aspects that are happening in your life. You're holding it in there and it's surfacing as tension because
I've got to say something to you which that is just perfect in terms of what you just said. So I had an experience with a real estate agent and which was quite negative, and the pain that I experienced in the month was like in my neck. It was just in my neck, and I felt like, there were certain things I couldn't say to her because she was representing my property. And I didn't want her to have negative energy towards my property. I wanted her to have positive energy, but I couldn't. And when it came out in terms of what I needed to say to her, like the next day, that pain in my neck disappeared. It was almost like I had to say it. I had to say, there was a lot of anger inside me, and I'd never expressed anger in that way before, to be honest. But I tell you what, that pain in my neck, oh my God, it left me because it was just awful.
That's it's so easy to see for myself when I'm seeing clients come in and I can see where they've got their pain. I also get to see where they're not expressing themselves, or the digestive system is a very fascinating area, and I work a lot with digestion. I have a lot of people come in with bloating and pain, and that's something that I've had most of my life as well. And I had everything that I've had to seriously look at and go, well, for the stomach, it's about your power center. Are you in power? Does someone have power over you? Are you not allowed to surface in that area? And that area actually develops when you're a toddler, believe it or not. So what happens when we're a toddler? The parent can cope with the child, or they can't cope with the child. Toddlers tend to want to push back, right?
Yeah.
So I want to be independent, but I need you to be dependent. I need to separate, but I also need to be close to you. Will you allow me to be independent in this sort of safe environment? And if the parents go, you can go and do those things, I mean, they're not going to say that, but if they allow them to do that, then that chakra, that solar plexus area will develop quite nicely and you'll be in your power. But anyone who's had the overbearing parent, a controlling parent, a parent who forces their will upon the child will not develop strongly in that area, and for the most part they'll end up with digestive issues because at some point in their life they've got to deal with it, right?
Incredible. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, I got IBS when I was going through my divorce back in 1998.
Right.
So that's when I got it, and it stayed with me. I'm actually quite happy to have it. I don't want to let it go now. So I'm quite happy to have IBS because there's certain things that I don't eat because of it. But that's when it started.
And you know what? The perfect thing is that sometimes when we get these symptoms, people will have, and I'll just quickly phrase this. When you started to get the symptoms of irritable bowel, that's not when it started. It may have started 6 months earlier, 12 months earlier.
For sure.
Because, if you were being suppressed in your life and you weren't allowed to do the things you really wanted to do, you start
100%. 100%.
There's resentment, there's frustrations, irritations impacting all the gallbladder and the liver and the fester. That energy in that area causes a lack of enzymes being produced, and a variety of things. So it surfaces 6 to 12 months, sometimes 2 years prior to the actual symptoms, physical symptoms of the body. But the good thing is that if you do have something like that and you work through it, you know that whenever a symptom like that comes back, what does it mean? What does it tell you?
It's giving you a very clear message.
That you're not doing what you need to be doing.
I know, that you're not living an authentic life, that you're living by somebody else's rules, somebody else's game plan, somebody else's values, which is very easy to do, you know, instead of really working out what are your values and what's good for you.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, when you look at people who are constantly dealing with bronchitis and asthma, you know, the chest area, the biggest organ in the chest area is the heart. It's the heart chakra, you know. And if you have lost love or you don't get to express love, and, you know, you see people walking around with their shoulders hunched, they're trying to protect themselves. There's a lot of asthma and chest issues and whatever else going on in that because of the grief or because of, you know.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
It is so fascinating. There's so much more there. And, you know, the wonderful thing about you, Vanessa, is that, you know, nobody can accuse you of being, you know, a, you know, fluffy lady, because this is someone who's got a double degree, guys. So Vanessa has got a science degree, and she is a hypnotherapist and a kinesiologist as well. So, you know, she specializes in helping women who experience digestive issues and are feeling anxious and are feeling like they're not in control of their life. This is Vanessa is your lady. So Vanessa's in Brisbane, which I love. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. I adore Brisbane. It's just so beautiful, so beautiful. So Vanessa's in Brisbane. So is there anything else, Vanessa, that you'd like to say?
Just that I'm excited. So, and I love the fact of having this opportunity to connect with like-minded people. And I know, you know, when I first kind of met you, Helen, I thought, this is the person that I would like to get to know more of. And who would have thought 6 months later?
I know. I met Vanessa in Brisbane. I was doing my half-day workshop there, and then Vanessa has completed the virtual retreat that we just had, and she's going to come to the Gold Coast in November to do the live retreat. But yeah, like I love, you know, for me, in terms of who my HypnoFit licensed partners are, they are just the most beautiful souls in the world that I love speaking to. I love spending time with, because ultimately the people that you want to work with are people that you actually enjoy the company of. And so these are my people. So I'm so happy that you're on board, Vanessa. Excited. And for those of you out there who, you know, where Vanessa has resonated with what's going on for you, you don't have to live in Brisbane. So Vanessa does Zoom calls as well. So Vanessa can help you online or face-to-face in Brisbane. If you are suffering from digestive issues, stress, how about stress instead of stress? Stress, or that feeling of overwhelm, and it is manifesting itself in some sort of pain in the body, then Vanessa is your lady, and you can see she's absolutely phenomenal and amazing. And I'm so honored that you have come on board as a HypnoFit licensed partner. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Helen. Really, really appreciate it. And can't wait to experience the next few months ahead of us.
Awesome, everybody.
Yeah.